Imagine this. You are stepping into a small European village sometime in the 13th century. Twilight has just descended. The sun slips quietly behind silver-hued trees, leaving a veil of mist drifting lazily over the thatched rooftops. In the distance, the steady rhythm of a watermill echoes, like a gentle lullaby serenading the countryside as it surrenders to the night. Inside a dimly lit stone room, its thick moss-covered walls hold the quiet warmth of the day. A single oil lamp flickers faintly. The subtle scent of melting beeswax mingles with oak wood and the fading aroma of extinguished firewood. You see a small bed, slightly higher than usual, layered with thick woolen blankets. And, nestled beneath them, perhaps, a family, or even more than one person, already fast asleep. Sleep in the Middle Ages was not quite what you might imagine. Today, we are familiar with private bedrooms, soft nightlights, and elevated pillows. But if you were to travel back in time, you would discover that sleep was once a communal experience, structured, ritualistic, and strange in the most curious of ways. People didn't just sleep once per night. They didn't rest in a single, uninterrupted stretch from dusk until dawn. Instead, they followed what we now call the two-sleep cycle, a nightly rhythm split into two distinct phases, separated by a period of wakefulness in the middle of the night, a time for quiet conversation, whispered prayers, or sometimes mending clothes and reading scripture under the dim glow of candlelight. Night was not a time to escape, but a pause to continue living more slowly, more inwardly. Medieval sleep was profoundly human. It wasn't forced awake by alarms, nor flooded with blue light, nor interrupted by traffic or a sudden ding at 2 a.m. Instead, there was the hush of wind slipping through wooden shutters, the soft crackle of firewood, and darkness, a true sacred kind of darkness, where the body and soul were allowed to return gently to the earth. Close your eyes and try to imagine if we lived in that world, would sleep feel kinder? Tonight, we will listen to the whispers of centuries past, to the peculiar customs of bedtime, the beliefs, the habits, and the quiet tales behind an old straw pillow. Softly now, for history is asleep. In the soft glow of a thatched roof cottage, the chill of December wind rustles through the trees outside, while inside, a mother slowly stirs from her first sleep. Her hand reaches into the darkness, fumbling gently for a small tallow lamp. She isn't waking because of restlessness, but because this is the watch between sleeps, a quiet, familiar interlude in the rhythm of everyday medieval life. People in the Middle Ages often slept in two distinct phases, known as the first sleep and the second sleep. The first sleep usually began not long after sunset around 8 p.m. They would sleep for 3 to 4 hours and then awaken naturally, not startled, not disturbed, simply aware in the heart of the night. Picture it. You open your eyes in a completely dark room, illuminated only by the soft flame of a single candle. There are no noises, no screens, only the quiet breath of your loved ones lying nearby. This middle-of-the-night period was often called the quiet hour, a sacred pause in the flow of time. And did you know, many used this interval to pray, write in journals, share quiet words with a spouse, or simply sit and reflect. Some even tended gardens by moonlight, their hands gently brushing dew-covered leaves beneath a sky of stars. There was no pressure to fall back asleep. No guilt about being awake at an odd hour. It was simply part of life. The second sleep would begin about an hour or two later and continue until dawn around 5 or 6 a.m., when roosters would crow and the day would begin again. Strange, isn't it? And yet, this split sleep rhythm wasn't unique to Europe. Historical records from Africa, the Middle East, and even parts of Asia described similar patterns, a way of living that honored the natural cadence of light and dark. Today, modern science has begun to recognize that the two-sleep model might actually suit many people, especially those who often find themselves awake in the middle of the night. Perhaps our ancestors discovered something long ago, something we are only now beginning to remember. So next time you find yourself awake at 3 a.m., instead of worrying, try this. Sit up, write a few lines in a journal, sip some warm water, and then slip back into rest, just as a medieval soul might have done. No rush, no panic, as though the long night always has space for gentle dreamers. Imagine this. You're stepping into a small wooden house tucked in the countryside of France around the year 1280. The roof is low, thick with bundles of straw. The walls are rough-hewn timber. In this simple space, the glow from the hearth still flickers faintly. Night wind hisses gently through the gaps in the door, but inside, there is the warmth of human presence. In the corner of the room sits a large bed, a very large bed. On it lie not just one person, but 2, 3, even 4 people, huddled together beneath a linen blanket worn soft with time. They may be husband and wife, children, or even a servant. Sleep, in those days, was something to share, not something to own. In the Middle Ages, a bed was a precious possession, but never a personal one. Most villagers, especially the poor, didn't have their own bed. Families slept together to preserve warmth during long, bitter winters when even breath turned into mist in the icy air. Their mattresses were often made of dry straw, leaves, or bean husks spread over wooden floorboards. Pillows, if they had them, were simple cloth sacks stuffed with chicken feathers or soft hay. And did you know? Sleeping together was not just about warmth, it was also a form of protection. In the thick darkness of medieval nights, surrounded by forests where wolves might howl, the mere presence of others brought a sense of safety. In rural homes, it wasn't unusual for 3 generations, grandparents, parents, children to sleep together under one large cover. Many children were born and raised with the rhythmic breathing of their entire family around them, in stillness, in shared warmth, not just from the fire, but from one another. How different it is from the modern world, where the idea of a private sleep space is a given. And yet, in the freezing silence of a 13th century night, an arm draped across your chest, a deep, steady snore nearby, might have been the most peaceful lullaby of all. Today, researchers suggest that communal sleeping, when done with care, may increase feelings of safety and emotional connection. And even though we may never return to that way of life, we can still learn this. Sleep is not only about rest, it's about relationship. So close your eyes and try to feel the comforting presence of someone resting beside you, even if only in memory. In the dim glow of a medieval stone castle, beyond the long, echoing corridors, there lies a place rarely noticed, the sleeping quarters of the servants. Imagine this. You're standing inside a grand kitchen. A copper pot hangs over the fire, and the scent of scorched bread still lingers in the air. And just beside the hearth there is a thin, worn mattress, laid directly on the floor, or perhaps a small nook in a wooden loft, barely large enough for one person to curl up and rest. Servants, those who kept the castle running smoothly, often slept in the humblest of spaces. No doors, no plush bedding. They made use of any available corner under the stairs, beside the oven, or even in the hayloft of a stable. Privacy was a luxury they didn't have. But in return, they often found the deepest, most honest kind of sleep. There was no alarm to jolt them awake. They rose when the sky was still gray, or when the first footsteps of their masters echoed through the stone halls. They went to bed last after the fires were doused, the pots were scrubbed, and the world had settled into a hush as soft as breath. Sleeping near the hearth, the warmest place in the home, might have been a small privilege. European winters were bitter, cold enough to freeze water in a bowl. But next to the fire, with the crackle of wood and the glow of embers casting amber ribbons across the walls, the silence felt almost sacred. While the masters slept in canopied beds, surrounded by thick curtains, the servants dreamed their simple dreams under the gentle watch of flickering ash. Today, the sound of a crackling fireplace or the low hum of a hearth is recorded and shared on YouTube as a sleep aid. How curious that what was once a necessity has become a form of modern therapy. Perhaps we are slowly circling back to ourselves, back to stillness, warmth, and the gentle rhythm of ordinary rest. Imagine this. You're standing in the middle of a harvested field. The scent of freshly dried straw still clings to your sleeves, and in the distance, a small thatched hut emerges beneath the copper glow of dusk. A medieval peasant, they lived simply, and they slept just as simply. Their homes were often just a single room, with a roof so low you had to bow your head to enter. The walls were made of packed earth or stacked stone. The floors were bare, hardened ground. There was no bed frame, no mattress. Just a corner layered with hay, or perhaps an old goatskin spread across the floor. They called it a bed, even without frame or padding. Children sprawled around their parents, one tossing a leg over an older sibling, another dozing off atop a mother's belly. No one was told when to sleep. It came naturally, when the day's labor was done, when the sun had long set, and when every muscle in the body had grown heavy from working the land. And strangely, it was that very exhaustion that brought the deepest sleep. No tossing, no pills, no need for special pillows. There were no locks on the door, only a thick curtain of cloth to block the wind. But inside, within the warm breath of family and the soft hum of crickets beyond the field, was a self-contained world of rest. The moonlight slipped through a crack in the roof, casting a quivering beam across a child's hair. Beneath the low ceiling, there was no sense of confinement, only a feeling of being held. Today, we might call this minimalist sleeping, but for them, it was all they had, and perhaps all they ever needed. In a world now overwhelmed with artificial light, alerts, and overstimulation, the simplicity of that sleep, silent, grounded, and bare, feels like a lullaby from the past, gently calling us home to stillness. In the soft glow of night, you see a man wearing a thick woolen cap, gazing up at the starlit sky. There are no phones, no streetlights, only the distant shimmer of stars, silent and steady, as if they've been there since the dawn of dreaming. For people in the Middle Ages, nature was the first clock. They had no alarm clocks, no notion of 11:59 p.m. But they knew when the moon would rise, when the rooster would crow, and when the sun would dip behind the far-off ridge. Sleep wasn't governed by exact hours, it was guided by light. In summer, when days stretched long, they stayed awake later watering plants, baking bread, finishing chores beneath the lingering twilight. But in winter, when the sun disappeared by 4 p.m., they would dine early and often be in bed by 6, wrapped in furs, surrendered to darkness. Picture it, a winter night, snow covering the roof like a white blanket. You lie in a small room, warmed only by your own body and the breath of those beside you, and outside, the moonlight slips through cracks in the wooden walls, casting silver rivers across the floor. People believed the moon influenced their sleep. On full moon nights, many found rest harder to come by dreams felt strange, even vivid. On moonless nights, sleep arrived easily, deeply, as if the thick darkness embraced the whole world and gently carried the mind away. Today, some modern studies suggest that the moon's phases might subtly affect our biological rhythms, though science has yet to draw firm conclusions. But one thing remains true. When you step outside and lift your eyes to the glowing moon, Something within you softens. Medieval sleep was in rhythm with the cosmos. No counting wavelengths of blue light, no digital aids. Just listening to the sky and letting the moon decide. Imagine this. You're sitting in a small monastery nestled in the quiet hills of England. Outside, the night has draped itself over the hedgerows and woods where an owl occasionally calls from afar. Within the silence of stone walls, a single candle flickers gently beside an old book, the Vulgate Bible, its spine worn, its leather cover carrying the scent of age. An elderly monk, cloaked in thick wool, finishes his final prayer of the day, then slowly closes the book, not placing it back on a shelf, but tucking it gently beneath his head, as a pillow for the night. For many in the Middle Ages, especially among the clergy, faith was the softest pillow, a spiritual cushion that cradled their dreams and shielded their souls from the darkness of the world. Sleep was not seen as a lapse in consciousness, but as a transition of the soul into a realm where angels might visit or trials of the spirit might unfold. That's why many never went to sleep without a prayer. A whispered word, a small sign of the cross, or a hymn recited like a lullaby. In fact, many kept personal prayer books not for nighttime reading, but to place near the bed, as if their very presence would guard the sleeper. A quiet gesture, trusting that something sacred watched over them through the night. In many homes, children were taught to pray before sleep from a very young age. The most common nighttime verse was, "Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep." It wasn't only religion, it was comfort. Even today, some people still keep the ritual of reading a few lines from a book or murmuring a mantra before closing their eyes. Not necessarily because of faith in a particular creed, but because night is when the soul asks to be soothed. And sometimes, the thing that cradles us into rest isn't a soft mattress or a warm blanket, but a whispered word, spoken gently into the silence. In the dim light of a red brick medieval home, you lie still, your eyes gently closed, and you begin to listen. There is no ticking wall clock, no cars passing in the street, no hum of an air conditioner. What you hear is the soft wind rustling through the thatched roof, the quiet pop and crackle of firewood in the hearth, and farther away, the even tolling of a church bell calling monks to midnight prayer. Medieval people lived alongside the sounds of nature. They did not resist it, insulate from it, or plug their ears against it. They let themselves drift within the quiet harmonies of the night. The wind slipping through a door frame played like a slow melody, gently reminding them that winter was near. The crackling of fire signaled warmth, safety. The rustling of dry leaves in the yard, like imagined footsteps, dancing on the edge of the senses. And above all, there was silence. Not the kind of silence that unsettles, but a tender stillness where every sound had its place, where even the breathing of someone asleep beside you became its own kind of music. Many people say they sleep better on windy nights or when the rain patters softly on the roof. Medieval folks were the same. On long rainy evenings, they would gather near the hearth, sip herbal infusions, share gentle stories, and slowly drift into sleep to the sound of water whispering from the sky. Today, we recreate these experiences with white noise recordings of rain, streams, crackling logs as if we're trying to return to a world where sound did not rush or compete or demand attention. You can try it too. Open a window, turn off your screens, and let the night wind sing you to sleep. Just as it once did for our ancestors centuries ago, because sometimes the gentlest lullabies are the ones with no melody at all. Imagine this. You step into a large chamber of an old castle where 10 people may live under one roof, sharing space, warmth from the hearth, and even sleep. There are no walls, No private rooms. And yet, you notice a canopied bed, its curtains thick and heavy, often made of velvet or tightly woven wool. In a world without privacy, the bed curtain became a wall of the soul. For noble families or those with means, the bed was often the most valuable item in the home, not just a place to sleep, but a place to converse, host visitors, or quietly write letters by candlelight. Most importantly, it came with curtains on all four sides tied up during the day and drawn shut at night, forming a room within a room. Close your eyes and imagine the soft swish of fabric brushing together, the muffled sound of footsteps in the hallway beyond, and the warmth, the heartbeat of your own body wrapped in this gentle textile cocoon. For medieval people, these curtains didn't just block the cold. They preserved heat, kept out insects, and shielded against unwanted eyes. Even among peasants, though, large beds where rare simple cloths were hung from ropes to create makeshift sleeping corners. This allowed for a sense of personal space in otherwise crowded homes, a small act of self-preservation, a whisper of solitude in a world of shared existence. Today, we live in rooms with doors that lock, with walls that stand firm, and yet, so few of us experience the true feeling of separation from the world, the kind people once created with nothing more than a curtain. Perhaps, in our overlit, overstimulated age, a dark-colored curtain, a thick blanket, and a quiet corner of our own are all we need to rediscover a medieval night's rest. A closed world where dreams are free to breathe. In the dim light of a borderland fortress, you see a torch burning low, the wind slipping through cracks in the stone walls, and a soldier, clad in thick armor, pacing slowly along the cold, hobbled corridor. While the entire stronghold sleeps, he remains awake. The medieval world was one of uncertainty. Raiding bands, wild beasts, and real dangers from the outside were ever present. That's why in castles, villages, and monasteries alike, there was always someone on night watch. One person's sleep was another's duty. And it wasn't just soldiers who stood guard. In monasteries, monks divided the night into sacred hours, rising for matins or lauds to read prayers and psalms in the darkness before dawn. In rural homes, it was often an elder who stayed up to tend the fire, keeping it from going out, ensuring warmth for the children and women who slept nearby. Imagine this. You are a farmer, sleeping in a thatched hut, and you know just beyond the village gate, someone is standing with a spear in hand, eyes fixed on the shadows, so you can dream without fear. That feeling, we call it peace of mind, and perhaps it is the most powerful sleep aid of all. Today, we no longer need guards at the door. But the presence of a loved one, the steady hum of a heater, or the faint hallway light left on, still gives us the sense that someone or something is watching over us. The mind needs protection to fall deeply asleep. And maybe no matter the century, whether it's a knight, a monk, or a parent sitting quietly by their child's bed, the act of keeping watch while others sleep is something sacred and deeply beautiful. Imagine this. You are stepping into a small attic room in the countryside of 14th century Germany. On a wooden shelf, bundles of herbs hang upside down, drying naturally lavender, mint, sage, and beside a simple wooden bed sits a herbal pillow filled to the seams with aromatic plants. Medieval people believed that scent could protect sleep and the soul. In a time before room sprays or diffusers, they already understood how to use flowers, leaves, bark, and dried roots to repel insects, soothe the mind, and create a restful sleep. The herbs were used in many ways, mixed into pillow stuffing, scattered over straw mattresses, or simply placed in small cloth sachets and hung near the head of the bed. Each plant carried its own meaning, its own whispered blessing. Lavender to ward off nightmares and calm the nerves. Sage to protect against evil spirits and bad dreams. Chamomile to relax the body and release tension. rosemary to help remember beautiful dreams. Picture this. It's a cold night in December. You're resting your head on a worn linen cover, and in the air, there's the soft trace of lavender and pine. Every breath you take feels like an invisible lullaby, as delicate as a falling leaf. And it wasn't just nobles who enjoyed fragrant sleep. Even peasants had their own tricks, hanging herbal bundles from ceiling beams so the scent would drift downward as night settled in. Today, modern science confirms what they once only believed, that aromatherapy can positively influence the quality of sleep. What they had faith in, we now understand. So perhaps, on nights when your mind is too restless to rest, you too can reach for a small pouch of herbs or a few drops of essential oil, and let those ancient fragrances remind you that a good night's sleep is an art passed down for generations. In the quiet light of a gray stone room, you notice something tucked beneath the pillow of a young girl, a small handmade cloth charm. Inside, a smooth round stone, a single strand of hair, and a line of handwritten script in faded brown ink. To many in the medieval world, sleep was not just physical, it was spiritual. The world then was full of unanswered mysteries, especially dreams, sleep paralysis, or that strange space between sleep and waking. To guard their rest from unseen forces, people placed small objects beneath their pillows, often referred to as sleep charms or night talismans. Some used small saint figurines, like depictions of the Virgin Mary or Saint Christopher. Others believed in the powers of moonstones, seashells, or a simple lucky coin. Some even tucked handwritten charms, Latin prayers inscribed on parchment rolled tightly, tied with a red string then hidden deep inside the pillow. A mother might hang a pouch of dried mint above a child's cradle. A wife might gift her husband a worn piece of veil tied with a white ribbon, a quiet way of saying, even in your dreams, you are not alone. To the modern mind, these may seem like superstition, but behind each small object was care, a silent wish to protect the people we love during the one part of life we cannot control, sleep. Today, we may not use charms, but many of us still keep small tokens near the pillow, a photo of family, a gift from someone dear, or perhaps a notebook where we scribble our last thoughts before bed. Each one, in its own way, whispers, "You're safe now, you can rest." And whether it's the 14th century or the 21st, every good night's sleep still needs a touch of comfort, even if it's hidden in the softest corner of a pillow. Picture this. It's a winter night. You're lying in a small stone-walled room. No windows, no oil lamp. Just a velvet black darkness, so thick you can't even see your own hand stretched out in front of you. Only your own breathing remains calm, rhythmic, and close. Medieval people slept in darkness, real darkness. No blue light, no phone screens, no glowing digits on digital clocks. To them, darkness wasn't frightening, it was natural. In many poor households, oil was too expensive to burn through the night. Candles were saved for special tasks. So when the fire died, the night truly began. You might wonder, weren't they afraid? In truth, humans used to be masters of darkness. They navigated rooms by memory, felt the warmth of someone nearby, and listened to cats meowing, wind through thatched roofs, branches scraping the stone. Among the nobility, some might leave a tiny oil lamp burning not for brightness, but to trace the faint outlines of a bed canopy or a nearby table. This light was always soft, never harsh, never glowing. And in monasteries, monks slept in absolute darkness. It was part of their meditation, a way to shut out distraction, to let sleep come in its purest form. Today, modern sleep science tells us that artificial light disrupts melatonin, causing restlessness. What medieval people didn't know, they still got right. Perhaps tonight, you could try it. Turn off all lights. Let the dark wrap around you like a soft blanket. Let your breath slow. Let your mind settle, just as your ancestors did for hundreds of years. In the soft gray light of early morning, you see a farmer slowly waking up. No alarm clock, no buzzing phone, simply because the body has rested and the sun has risen. Medieval people didn't need sleep hacks. They slept because they were tired. Tired in the most natural way. Their day began before the sky turned blue, working the fields, feeding animals, harvesting, cooking, cleaning, mending. And when the sun dipped below the hills, they shared a humble meal, then went to bed. No gym sessions, no yoga apps. Yet their bodies moved all day long under the sky, with the rhythm of the earth. And so, when night came, they slept like stones. No modern insomnia. No glowing screens. No lingering anxiety from unread emails or unfinished to-do lists. Of course, they had their own worries, failed crops, illness, hunger. But the simplicity and structure of their days, with a beginning, a middle, and a clear end, kept their inner clocks in sync. Imagine, after a day threshing wheat beneath the sun, your limbs aching, clothes damp with sweat, you lie on a straw bed and sleep comes like a whisper. Today, many of us sleep poorly, not from too much activity, but from too little. Our minds are exhausted, yet our bodies sit still. The kind of fatigue they knew, we've almost forgotten. Perhaps the secret to deep sleep lies not in supplements or meditation, but in living closer to the ground. To walk, to lift, to breathe outdoor air. To let yourself grow truly tired, then fall asleep, honestly, completely, like a quiet blessing. From a simpler, more grounded world. Imagine this. Dawn has barely broken. A gentle mist, like a white shawl, stretches across distant hills. Inside a wooden cottage, someone stirs beneath a rough linen blanket, not rushed, not startled, simply because their body knows it is time to wake. Medieval people had no alarm clocks, no buzzing phones, no flashing LED lights disturbing the dark. Yet they still woke on time. Naturally, instinctively. Why? Because their lives moved in rhythm with nature. They rose with the rooster's call, with the first golden ray slipping through a wooden crack, or with the church bell tolling softly at dawn, the hour of morning prayer. No snooze button, no frantic countdown. Just a kind of instinctual awakening, shaped by habit, by routine, and by silence. Imagine waking not from a jarring sound, but from something almost invisible. The warm light of morning spilling through a wooden wall. The smell of fresh bread wafting from the neighbor's oven. The crackle of kindling catching fire for breakfast. No rush, no pressure, just the opening of your eyes, as though you too were part of the slow and sacred turning of the earth. Today, we live in a world of alarms, alerts, and scheduled chaos. Waking up feels like a task, not a transition. But what if just once you tried waking without an alarm? Letting sunlight be your signal, or the soft call of birds outside your window. You might find something ancient awakening inside you. Because, just like in medieval times, your body still remembers. It's just been a while since you last listened. We shall continue to explore. In the dim glow of an ancient monastic library, you notice a weathered, leather-bound book resting on a wooden desk. Its yellowed pages whisper secrets, and on one of them, faded brown ink reads, "Last night I walked through a field of white flowers, and someone in a silver cloak called my name." This is not a short story. It's a dream journal. In the medieval world, dreams were not illusions. They were messages from God, the spirit world, or the deepest layers of one's soul. Many people, monks, mothers, farmers, wrote down their dreams each morning, in personal journals, on parchment scrolls, or even carved into wooden boards. Dreams were not just to remember, but to decode. Why? Because in their view, truth hid inside dreams. Some monks used them to make important decisions. Mothers watched them for signs about their children. The sick dreamed of flowing water, a symbol of healing and renewal. Entire books were written to interpret dreams. Horses meant joy. Deep water warned of danger. Dreams of flight were seen as divine callings. What's most fascinating is that medieval people went to sleep with anticipation, not for rest, but to receive visions, lessons, or even divine guidance. To them, nighttime wasn't just sleep. It was a sacred dialogue with the unseen. Today, in a world of data, measurement, and constant screens, dreams may be one of the last realms where mystery, poetry, and intuition still live. You might try it yourself. Tomorrow morning, write down even just a few blurry lines of a dream. Fragments, symbols. Even if they don't make sense, who knows? You may discover something that daylight kept hidden. Because night may be the only time we truly meet ourselves. Imagine this. You are a pilgrim, walking the long, dusty road to Canterbury. There are no inns, no warm beds. Only your thick cloak, a satchel of stale bread, and the cool earth beneath your tired feet. Night falls. The wind hums softly through the trees. The moon floats quietly above. You find shelter beneath an ancient oak, bundle your cloak into a makeshift pillow, lie back on the ground, and close your eyes to the lullaby of insects whispering all around. This was how medieval travelers slept. Simple, wild, but filled with freedom. Before modern transportation, hundreds of thousands walked across vast lands each year, for trade, for war, or for faith. And they slept wherever they could, along roadside ditches, beneath porches, in abandoned stables, or beside quiet rivers. No guarantees of safety. No feather pillows. No heated blankets. Just the open sky and the wisdom of the earth. But in those rough conditions, they learned something we've forgotten. How to sleep with nature, not against it. The rustling leaves became music. The moon, a silent lamp. And the scent of soil reminded their bodies where they came from. Today, we book hotels, read reviews, debate over goose down or smart thermostats. Yet deep within, perhaps we still long for that kind of sleep. Raw, quiet, and deeply human. Beneath an endless sky, touched only by wind and starlight. It's more than rest. It's a return. And perhaps, on some night, if you lie beneath the stars, head resting on grass, breathing with the rhythm of the earth, you'll understand why our ancestors slept so well. In the faint light of an ancient night, imagine yourself sitting by the hearth in a small stone cottage. Someone, perhaps a grandmother, a mother, or an old monk, is telling you stories about how people used to sleep twice a night, about bed curtains and herb-stuffed pillows, about moonlight casting silver across linen sheets, and you begin to realize none of it feels that foreign, because, in some way, these things have stayed with you. When you turn off the lights early and put away your phone, when you open the window and let in the night air, when you lie beside someone you love and hear the steady rhythm of their breath, when you choose a page of a book over the endless scroll of a glowing screen, that is the medieval sleep returning. Gentle, silent, unannounced. Sleep from the beginning of time was sacred, not just for rest, but for healing, for letting go, for being reborn with every dawn. Medieval people didn't have luxury homes, but they had real darkness, true silence, and time that moved slowly and kindly. They didn't treat insomnia because they never lost sleep in the first place. Now, after listening to this entire strange and beautiful journey, from double sleeps, shared beds, and canopy drapes, to firelit rooms, herbal pillows, sacred charms, and dreams filled with meaning, perhaps a part of that old world has quietly found its way back to you. Maybe tonight you'll sleep a little better, not because you did anything right, but because you're no longer sleeping alone. Beside you are the centuries before, the ancient rhythms of rest, the lullabies of time itself. Thank you for listening. Now let your eyes gently close. Let the wind whisper around you, and let sleep like an old guest come knock softly at your heart. Good night, and see you again in another story, just as quiet and just as kind.